At the end of the episode Anne-sterminator, we learn that a different and very mysterious force has learned about Anne, the Plantars, and the robot invasion. The Federal Bureau of Investigation. Ooh. And that is as scary to me as any of Andreas's invasions. The FBI can be a very shady organization. I saw someone earlier in the Amphibia comment section, probably some kid who's like, "Oh, the FBI, that's not too scary." And I'm like, dude, do you have any idea what kind of stuff the FBI gets up to? But enough of that. Will the FBI be on Anne's side? I don't know. It is certainly possible. And who is this Mr. X who's going to be voiced by RuPaul? It's anyone's guess at this point. I do think that the FBI could be on Anne's side, at least eventually, and I do think a bit of institutional support would help Anne try and repel this grand robot invasion. Although Anne is going to have to be careful, and she knows it. She has a distrust of the authorities after everything she's seen in Amphibia, and she knows that the FBI may not respond positively to a bunch of giant talking frogs. Now, I have seen some people offer the theory that with the robot who has been chasing Anne throughout these first 5 episodes, 5 episodes meaning 5 weeks of episodes, I know they're split into 2 11-minute segments, don't at me. With that robot gone, I've seen a lot of people suggesting that this mysterious Mr. X is going to take over as the new secondary antagonist. And, well, that's possible, but we're already over a quarter of the way through this season. We are already half the way through Season 3A. I think it would be kind of weird to introduce a new secondary antagonist now. And besides, we see the FBI on Anne's side in the intro, so I imagine that they are going to join her side sometime before Andreas's main invasion of Earth. How long is that going to take? I don't know. It's possible that the FBI could be on her side by the end of Mr. X, the episode, but it's also a possibility that that process could take significantly longer. Anyway, before I speak any more about the FBI and Mr. X, I would like to stop for a second and contemplate the 2 episodes we have just seen in the show. Those being Fixing Ferobo and the Anne-sterminator. Now, I do like to think of myself as a more or less humble person, so I must admit that I got my 2 big predictions about these episodes wrong. I suspected that the pink-haired girl who is helping Polly fix Ferobo was going to be related to Marcy, and, well, for all we know, she might still be, but there was no indication of that in the episode itself. And then we get the indication that in Anne-sterminator, Marcy is not going to appear for a long time in the future. I thought Marcy might be the Anne-sterminator. I thought she might be this new malevolent force trying to take out Anne. I thought that could be a really good plot for an episode. I still think that. But it's unlikely to happen at this point. I have my doubts that Marcy is going to appear in her new possessed form until Anne already arrives back in Amphibia. So I was wrong about that prediction. But that's alright. That's not really a big deal. I'm an analyst and a critic first and foremost. I'm not some fortune teller. I'm not a forecaster. I don't really care as much about that. Although, I am still a little bothered by the description for this episode, which is something along the lines of a dangerous enemy finally locates Anne and the Plantars. Which makes no sense, because if that dangerous enemy is just the robot, that robot has already located Anne and the Plantars before. We've already seen that robot quite a few times. So that episode description doesn't really line up with the actual heart and spirit of what we're seeing, which is odd to me. But c'est la vie. There are more important topics to discuss, like these episodes themselves. Fixing Frobo was good. Perfectly good. No problems there. I like that Polly is apparently a tech whiz, a robotics expert now. I actually don't have a problem with that. I think it could work well to her character. I think it's more interesting than her just being a brute force warrior. And I always like characters having hidden talents. Like Sprig being able to play the violin very well, being a virtuoso in that regard. And it makes sense for Polly because we've seen her with Frobo before. She feels a very strong connection toward Frobo, so her being the one to fix Frobo and kind of become this genius tech whiz, it kind of works. I've seen some people complain a little bit that Frobo was brought back from the dead, reversing what we saw happen in True Colors, but as I don't really care much about Frobo as a character outside of his interactions with Polly, I don't really care either way. Anne-sterminator is more interesting to me. I am not the kind of person who really cares about the robot who was chasing Anne and the Plantars. I think this robot was kind of a disappointing villain. They could have been made a lot more interesting. I love how genuinely nerdy and weird and eccentric Andreas is. I love that for all the lies he tells about himself and about Newtopia, the whole his being a dork thing was absolutely not a front. That is 100% genuine, and combined with his malevolence toward Anne and the Plantars, it becomes all the more disturbing. But I am much more interested in these little hints we get that the time Anne was gone matters. The despair and anguish that Anne's parents suffered during the months she was gone is felt. It is not the focus of the show, but it is not buried either. It is important for us to recognize and contemplate. It is not a force that we can just ignore, and I appreciate that. Anne was gone. Her parents were heartbroken and despondent, and we feel that. I love seeing all the Anne mannequins there in Anne's mom's workroom. I love, especially, that Anne's mom was keeping track of the days she was gone and then just stopped counting after 3 months. That's heartbreaking. And I love Anne's desperate "I know" when her mother accuses her of not being this perfect, responsible daughter and not having grown as much as Anne was really projecting that she had. Anne has grown quite a bit, but she's also still very confused and lonely and bitter. And she has no idea what the future is going to hold for her. She's clueless and just trying to stumble her way from day to day. And it was good to see that acknowledged. But back to the FBI for a second. I have absolutely no clue what role the FBI is going to play in the future of the show. We've already seen a lot of characters who are on the side of Anne and the Plantars. We've seen the museum curator, Dr. Jan, and we've seen the two dorky IT gals. And from what we've seen in the intro and the trailer, we're going to get that blue-haired scientist helping out Anne in the future. So will the FBI just be another ally for Anne, or will they be an enemy? I'm suspecting that they're not going to be completely positive toward Anne and the Plantars. Certainly not at first, but I do get the general feeling that they are going to win Anne over, and that she's going to be able to win them over and get them to not keep freaking out about these giant talking frogs. I'm not sure that they are going to be friends, but they might be allies. Andreas is bringing an enormous army of robots over to Earth. Earth's defenses might need all the help they can get. Anne is more responsible. She is kind of a person who does not really know what the future holds for her. She is having a hard time processing what happened to her friends and what happened to her relationships with her friends. But she's more level-headed and more empathetic than she was right at the start of the show. I think she can be a major help to the forces trying to expel Andreas and his robots from Earth. The forces trying to defend Earth. With her magic powers and her know-how about Andreas and Amphibia, she could really be a big help to the government. And hopefully they see her as an ally as well, instead of trying to run strange experiments on her and the frogs. But we will have to see what the future holds. And I'm kind of interested to see what Andreas does going forward. He and his robots are probably going to launch a full invasion of Earth very soon, because the old be stealthy, do a reconnaissance mission kind of thing did not work out as well as Andreas expected it would. So I'm very interested to see what the show does with Mr. X. I'm very interested to see what kind of character he ends up being, though I hope he still does not detract from the main soul of the show, which will always be Anne's relationships with her friends and with the Plantars, and even above all that, with her own fears and longings and anxieties about the future. So I guess we will see what happens. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to keep seeing more videos like this. Tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. I love the peaks behind the facade of normalcy that we get. I appreciate that we get a little insight into the void left behind by Anne's disappearance for months and months. I hope we get a little more of that as the show keeps progressing. Anyway, adios, comrades!